Lorwyn Eclipsed is the long-awaited return to the plane of Lorwyn. The main story has been released in advance of the actual set, presenting the plane via the point of view of 4 Strixhaven students who've stumbled through an omen path and ended up stranded on the plane, discovering what it has to offer for the first time. It's a clever way of showcasing the features of the plane by presenting it to the students as a surrogate audience. But it focuses so much on the students and their experiences that it ended up feeling like a prologue to the Strixhaven set coming out later this year, instead of being an actual story about Lorwyn. Magic players have been waiting 18 years to return to Lorwyn, and by the end of the story, it felt like we'd already left. Just a short stroll through the plane to see the sights before leaving with the POV characters. Now you could say the same thing about a lot of Magic stories. Like with Duskmourn being a story about existing Magic characters going to Duskmourn to find Nashi and escape. So it's not entirely without precedent, it's just that this time it felt like nothing actually happened on the plane while they were there. It was just a story about leaving. All that said, the best Magic story comes from the cards themselves, not the written narrative, so I believe there's still hope that actually playing with the cards will be able to immerse us in the world, and that feeling will carry us through its run in Standard. Here's hoping. But for now, we get to meet the next generation of Strixhaven, with 4 students on a field trip to gather ingredients farther into the plane of Arcavios, untouched by the magical forces within Strixhaven. They're led by Dina, one of the main students from the first Strixhaven set, now a TA under Liliana Vess. All of the students are in the same general class, none of them fully committed to any one specific school, but through the story it is indicated which school they will be in when the actual Secrets of Strixhaven set arrives. Abigail is an owlin aligned with Silverquill. She appears to be deaf, using a magical hearing aid that allows her to hear and speak telepathically. Seinar is a goblin on the Prismari study track. Last time we were in Strixhaven, we didn't see any goblins, save for the card Rejected, implying that Arcavios always had some goblins, but Seinar might be one of the first to actually be admitted as a student. It's possible, however, that he's from an entirely different plane. With Tamira, a Gorgon from Chandelar, it's confirmed that after the opening of the Omen Paths, Strixhaven is now a fully interplanar magic school. Despite the usual depiction of Gorgons being black-green, Tamira is shown as being a Quandrix hopeful. Last is Kiral, a vampire who is the only one of the students whose card was revealed during the story. This all but confirms the schools that were implied, as they were given a red-white card reflecting how they are presented as being an aspiring Lorehold student. And yes, Kiral is exclusively referred to as they and them in the story, establishing them as non-binary. As an aside, vampires are super weird in Magic. I have no idea what the rules are. Kiral seems to be entirely unaffected by the Lorwyn Sun, and I don't think there is any mention of how or if they interact with blood. Anyway, the story starts proper as the 4 students stumble through an Omen path and are dropped on Lorwyn. The path closes up, and Dina, still in Arcavios, discovers that they're missing, and understandably, freaks out about it. Coincidentally, when she goes to tell Liliana, Ajani was visiting to lay the groundwork for Reality Fracture, and agrees to go to Lorwyn to escort them back to Arcavios via an Omen path that connects to Chandelar. It's a little convoluted, but honestly, it's just nice to see Chandelar even briefly mentioned. Back on Lorwyn, the students accidentally wake up the personification of night, and meet Brigitte, the Kithkin hero from the original Lorwyn block. She takes them to a Kithkin village, then promptly disappears for pretty much the rest of the story. Before she does, she tells them to go to the fairies and talk to Marlin, who apparently is like an elf created by the previous queen of the fairies, Una, which is news to me. I guess I didn't know the original Lorwyn story as well as I thought. Speaking of, this whole time a fairy has been following them, and is actually the entire reason they stumbled into the Omen Path in the first place. Anyway, on the way to the fairies, Kiral gets kidnapped by elves, Abigail drowns in a river getting caught by Marrow, and this separates them from Seinar and Tam, who are the only ones who actually get to Maryland. Kiral's abductor is an elf named Lewin, who presents them before High Perfect Morkant. Morkant wants Kiral to find an herb called Dawnglove, which she hopes to use to kill the awoken embodiment of night. As an aside, it's worth noting that I actually lied earlier. In one interaction with Morkant, Kiral is misgendered. They actually correct her, and she repeats the misgendering intentionally. So often in fiction, I feel like when non-binary characters are included, their pronouns are just used correctly without actually being established. I really appreciate seeing Kiral actually stand up for being called them, solidifying that they're non-binary and didn't just happen to be consistently get referred to as they. Anyway, Abigail, on the other hand, ultimately just kind of goes on a detour with no incident. She runs into some Marrow, and they get her back to the surface with no fuss. The story proceeds with seeing how waking the night has upset the balance between Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, creating said eclipse, and watching Marilyn try to fix it, and discovering that the fairy who's been following them was actually Oko, who turns out to have been from Lorwyn this entire time, and was also a product of Una, effectively being Marlin's brother. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but at this point, it felt like everything just kinda ends with the kids happenstantially meeting up, and Ajani appearing and taking them back to Arcavios. There's a scene where Tam almost dies for no good reason, reason. The Dawn Glove that Kiro found before escaping Morkant is used to save her, and we just leave. Theoretically, stuff is still going on, but the POV leaves Lorwyn, and we leave with it. It's very anticlimactic. So, goodbye, Lorwyn. Hope you enjoyed your stay of half a day of wandering, not even meeting all of the plane's main creature types. What does happen in the story, though, is that the elf who kidnapped Kiro actually helped them escape High Perfect Morkant, and begs Ajani to come with them to Strixhaven when they all leave, since he's sure that the elves of Lorwyn will have him killed for what he did. Which actually leaves us with one student for each of the 5 schools for when Secrets of Strixhaven actually starts proper. As a Lorwyn elf, Lewin fits perfectly as our missing black-green Witherbloom student, completing the set. So, yeah, I'm left feeling like the most important thing that happened in the Lorwyn story was introducing 4 students and recruiting a 5th for when we go to Secrets of Strixhaven. And honestly, I'm really interested in what's going to happen to the students next. I think they're all established really well, I think they're very lovable, but all in all, nothing really happens of interest on Lorwyn itself. We barely get to see the plane at all while we're there, and there's almost no story other than just seeing the plane. The only new named characters in the story from Lorwyn are High Perfect Morkant and Lewin. That's it. Like, what new legends are we gonna see in the main set? And when we meet them, because there probably will be some, will we just know nothing about them? Why aren't they here? Other than that, we get to see how some characters from the original Lorwyn set have changed. We see Marlin, Aisling, Brigitte, and Reese. Reese even dies, but still it feels like nothing new happens. I realized in reviewing this set that I would have much rather seen a series of short stories instead of one long story. If we had a series of shorts where each one focused on a different denizen of the plane, I think that would have been a really good introduction to the plane as a whole, instead of just this weird slice of the plane with more focus on Strixhaven than anything else. And that structure of a series of short stories could still work to introduce these new students if they still wanted that. Maybe each short story starts with the new students coming upon another type of creature. That's already kind of the structure of the story, but we bounce around a lot and we don't really tell a complete story about each of these new types when we do meet them. We just show up and have sort of a brush with them as part of another chapter that's about something completely different, instead of focusing on boggarts in one chapter and then treefolk in another or something like that. Instead, in the actual story, we mostly just say hi and bye and move on. I hope this doesn't come across as being hateful towards the author. I don't know how much say in the story they actually had, or if they really just got to decide the prose. For the record, the prose is beautiful. Like I said, I actually really like the new characters that were added. They are very evocative, interesting, and I'm excited to see more of them. They're just not from Lorwyn. The way the story comes across, it feels like they just weren't actually given the ability to tell a story with any real substance. Like they were told, here are the things you're allowed to talk about, don't overstep, because we don't want to commit to any story decisions that you're adding in this spotlight. Which sucks, because fans have waited so long to get back to Lorwyn, and we're kind of given nothing. Please don't get me wrong, I'm still incredibly excited for this set, but I hope that the cards do a better job at telling a story than the story did. I often mention that my favorite set is actually New Capenna, but I played that set before I was an avid reader of the story, so it wasn't the story that made me love it. It was how the world was depicted through the cards themselves. I'm hoping the Lorwyn cards can do the same, despite the written story mostly just acknowledging the plane's existence before asking us to move along and look forward to Strixhaven instead.